right, so yesterday I met somebody really interesting. We're going to talk about it. His name is Rick. Okay, I met Rick yesterday. Rick is an engineer. Let me point at it from this side. Rick is an engineer, okay, just like me. So that kind of resonated already. So we were kind of clicking and vibing, and we were talking about career stuff. Rick left his job when he was 25 years old. He is now 35 years old, and he is a business owner. He made his way into business because he learned sales, and he went from a lucrative, promising upstart career to knocking on doors as a salesperson because for various reasons, one of them, he almost was forced out of his department, but also he just wasn't vibing with what was going on. Today, Rick has a smile on his face. He's happy. He runs his own company. Like I said, he's a business owner. He runs the ship now. So he's doing well. As we got into our conversation and he started to learn about my story, which was similar, I was in corporate, I worked as an engineer, but I voluntarily left and have been kind of on this exploratory journey of what am I doing with my life? You know, it was less for me personally about how do I want to make money, and more so for me about how do I want to live life and how do I want to invest my time and spend my time before I fucking die, right? Because that can happen anytime. So every day I better make sure that I'm doing what I would deem to be reasonably squeezing the lemon, doing as much as I possibly can on this earth. And if I'm not, why not? Etc. etc. Not to go too far down the path. But Rick said something very interesting to me. He asked me when he heard about my journey and why I left, it came out that he wasn't really able to define his own journey in that way. He wasn't really able to tell me directly how he rationalized his decision to leave his company and his engineering career. And he said to me, "Can you articulate why you left?" He said that to me. "Can you articulate why you left?" And I was a little baffled. I was kind of dumbfounded. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean you need me to say it? You know? How do you not know? Like, you did it. It's been 10 years. You found a new career and you're happy. Why do you need me to explain it? But who cares? That's fine. You can't articulate it. That's fine. I found it very interesting that a person could make a decision like that and reflect on it like that and have that type of curiosity to hear from another person, because acknowledging, he did say to me in that conversation, people are mirrors. He's relatively well educated, informed, enjoys philosophy. He said people are mirrors, meaning that he was defining me as his mirror and he was enjoying what he was kind of getting, what reflections were happening. So he was just curious, and maybe I shouldn't dog him for not being able to articulate it. Perhaps the better way to say it was that he was curious about how I would articulate a similar decision for my life. Okay, I think that's a little bit more reasonable of a statement. I was still surprised though. He said there was some kind of something, you know? He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but there was something that called to him. So he said, "What do you think it is?" And I got a little bit philosophical. I kind of took a step back and I described kind of the workplace dynamics. And I started with, I'm going to write as I talk. One day, by the way, I hope to have one of those e-glass things where I can just write on the screen and you can see what I'm writing. But for now, we're going to go with my $3 pad of paper because that's what you do when you're an entrepreneur. MVPs, minimum viable products, you just have to start somewhere. I'm trying to get out of my own head and not worry so much about the whiteboard and the beautiful digital drawing and the iPad and the I just okay, look, start somewhere, get your paper. So when he asked me about why he or how I could articulate making that decision, leaving the workplace, and I said, I don't think it's uniquely you. I think that there is something human about it. I think that there is something universally common that a lot of people in that generation, my generation, especially feel called, you know, this doesn't work for me. And Gen Zs enter the workplace and they can tell right away because it's misaligned right away. Like they barely have jobs, or like they barely stay in jobs for, they definitely don't do it for 10, 15, 20 years because they haven't had that much time in the workplace. I think they've only been in the workplace for like 10 years. So I would say it's probably rare for them to be there for 10 years in one job because they know like there's such misalignment there. So I think that's why I say millennials. The millennials entered the workplace when it was such a way, and then we've seen the advent of technology, social media and AI now, that's impacted our work. And there have been conversations that we have been privy to, both as employees, as bosses, as parents, that are obviously relevant to our children, that we are participating in, that we are leading, along the lines of what is healthy, right? And that goes for day to day life, but it absolutely applies to the workplace. And millennials are starting to pick up on and have started executing on, we don't have to do it the same way that it's been done, right? It, it's just because it's been done that way doesn't mean that we have to. So when I answered, I showed my picture already. When I answered, I started by saying post-industrial revolution and World War II. That's when I think this all kind of like started, right? Because sure, industrial revolution a long time ago, but post-World War II, that's when the world kind of like reset and women were in the workplace like never before. And masculinity, okay, well, let's not go too far. But women were in the workplace, and our corporations and our structures were entering this different era of everything. Economics changed, economies changed, global marketplaces, global economies shifted, priorities changed. But to the individual, it became about, you know, it became about value that you offered to the company and to the workplace. And I'm just going to cover this up for now because I drew something on there. You saw my little robot. I drew my robot in anticipation of getting there, but I'm not getting there yet. For the individual in the workplace, it became about the value that you offered to your company. And how did you offer value to your company? You did it by showing your dedication. You excelled at whatever you needed to do. You stayed late. You worked overtime. You achieved results. And you did that all with time. You invested time in the workplace. So the company then, as it stretched and as we crossed the 2000s and, the 80s became the 2000s and more people entered the workplace, it became more competitive, and margins were stretched thinner, became more about more time. And then overtime became an expectation. It was no longer overtime. It was just standard. And it was still about time. And now I'll point back at my drawing, and that's why I drew this. People were expected to work like robots, right? There came a time in the workplace where we just expected to show up early, to stay late, to be accessible and work on the weekends and be available all the time, and produce the same way at all times, right? And if you took a coffee break that, Lunch breaks and coffee breaks were set, right? It was this amount of time for you to recharge your battery, but you better be back at your desk when you need to be and keep producing. And it just became very robotic. People started being treated as robots. And what I said to Rick was, that's why he has a smiley or a sad face in this picture, because I think, Rick, people were treated like robots. And so there becomes this like human calling. It just says like, this doesn't work for me. I can't work like this. This just doesn't resonate with me. Now you can talk about human design, and there are things called generators. Look it up if you haven't looked up human design. It's fascinating, but it's about how people channel energy differently. And there are people called generators who can just do this. They just work straight constantly. They produce at a certain level, and it's possible. You know, they're kind of robotic. Generators. Me, I am a manifester, so I can produce more output than a generator can, but for shorter periods of time, and then I must rest. I have to rest. I cannot sustain. So I'm an up and down sort of energy person. And people just work differently. And I took interest in this, by the way, because I realized I couldn't just work like a robot. And I was like, why can't I work like a robot? And this is one of those reasons. So when Rick asked me to articulate, why do you think I felt the need to leave that job? This was included in my answer. I said, well, there's something human about the way that the workplace evolved and the economies evolved and treated people like and employees in workplaces like they were robots. But there's a great equalization coming now. In the next few years, the actual robots have arrived, right? Because AI is here now. And soon robotics will be here en masse. Robotics is already here, of course. Robotics has been here for a while, right? Robots have been taking factory line, assembly line jobs for years because machines have been getting better. It's just now this like AI with robot integration that's going to start taking more jobs. So I said to Rick, I think there's a great equalization coming because the robots will now be able to do robotic tasks better than people. Undoubtedly. The robots don't need to rest. The robots don't make mistakes. They don't need coffee breaks. The robots will start doing the robotic tasks better than the people, and the people will have to do people jobs. That's what's happening in the workplace. And it's a very macro concept. And if you zoom in, you can find examples. And maybe that's what I need to do for the next one, is find a very specific, tangible example of tasks, but you can already see that AI is filing information. AI is compiling, storing information. It's accessing information in ways that humans never could. It's been evolving in that way for, a decade or two already. So if a person wishes to continue to remain valuable to their company, it can no longer be via their time. Boy, this is going to be a lot easier when I have that fucking thing. You can't do it with time anymore. You can't. Like, you're going to have to figure out a way to offer value to your company by being a human. Whatever that means, Like customer service, a given. Human to human is always going to be appreciated. There will always be energy between people that cannot exist between a human and a robot. Leadership, team management, things like that. Some of those are obvious. Creativity, of course. Some of these things are pretty obviously human. But for you, for the person who's curious about their career, for the professional, mid-stage or mid-career professional, maybe a millennial in their 30s or 40s, an older Gen Z, like whatever it is, that however it applies to you, it's time for us all to be a little bit more thoughtful about what value we contribute to our companies and to society, by the way. And you better believe that I'm trying to do it too. And it's with stuff like this, like I just love connecting these ideas. I love talking about this stuff. I love writing and telling stories, and this is how I think I can offer some sort of value. So I'll continue, and I'm not just saying this stuff. That's why I say this, because I'm not just saying this stuff. I said it to Rick when I talked to him. Like, I'm looking for I'm looking for, reliable income, life sustaining income, but I want to be more than just like getting by. I don't want just a job or something like that. I want to live life before I die. How am I living life? And I truly believe that, everyone has something unique to offer the world, and we're getting a little closer. I don't think we'll ever find the extreme of everyone being able to do exactly what they want to do and offer the value that they can as human beings to society, but I think we're stepping towards that a little bit with all of these things that are happening. Like, the internet, obviously the biggest facilitator of this, as far as technology, because it connected us and it provided opportunities for us to build businesses in ways that we've never been able to in human history. And AI is going to continue that. Blockchain is going to continue that. Yeah. Moral of the story: people cannot be robots. Do not try to compete with robots. Must be human. Human. Soon I'll get better at drawing on a pad of paper when I'm not looking at it and when I'm looking at the mirror. Thanks for watching.